Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of Empire State of Sports, a podcast by New York sports fans for New York sports fans. I'm Alex Rocco, and I'm alongside Josh Asico, Chris Rocco, and Evan Marcus. As we all know, 2020 has been a very crazy year as we've dealt with COVID-19 and are still dealing with COVID-19. In a typical year, you would have football, hockey, and basketball all going on. However, that's not the case for this year, as we just have football playing. Hockey and basketball finished their seasons up a few months ago, and they're working toward starting up their season again. So, boys, let's jump in and start talking about the New York Giants and the New York Jets. So, going into the offseason, the New York Giants were a team that we had a lot of questions about the Giants. Obviously, with starting at quarterback with Daniel Jones, struggled at times in his rookie season, had a problem with fumbling. The one really main thing that we didn't have a question at all about is Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is one of the best running backs in all of football. And if you're a Giant fan or just if you follow the NFL, Saquon Barkley hasn't been a part of this Giants team this year. In week 2, in a loss against the Chicago Bears, Saquon Barkley tore his ACL, and that's proven to be a huge loss for the Giants. And going back, there's been other questions about the defense. GM Dave Gettleman brought in cornerback James Bradbury, Blake Martinez. We didn't know how they were going to play. And obviously, the biggest question for all Giants fans had is they brought in a new head coach, Joe Judge. No one really knew how Joe Judge was going to coach. He was taught by Bill Belichick, Nick Saban. So he definitely had a good background, but no one knew how Coach Judge was going to coach. And he's been an excellent coach this year. The Giants have a 4-7 record. Started off the year 0-5, but look past the 4-7 record. The Giants have been an excellent team. They're the best 4-7 team in football. They've played really, really close games. They started off the season losing 26-16 to the Steelers, a team that's 11-0 now. They lost by 4 to the Bears, lost by 8 to the Rams, lost by just 3 to the Cowboys, lost by 1 to the Eagles, and lost by 2 to the Buccaneers. And if a few breaks go the Giants' way, you could be seeing a team that is in the thick of things in the NFC. Granted, the NFC East is not good at all, and the Giants are 4-7 and in first place. So all is well in that department. But if you take a deeper dive and look at the Giants more, Daniel Jones has played well as of late, but starting off the season, very turnover prone, 9 interceptions in leading up to his last 3 games where he went turnover free. The running game without Saquon Barkley has struggled at times, but you've seen Wayne Gallman really pick it up as of late. And the receivers, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, and Golden Tate have all been solid options. But the Giants have been led in part by their defense. Blake Martinez has proven to be an excellent signing by Dave Gettleman, as he's a league leader in tackles with 101. You've seen Logan Ryan at free safety have a big impact. Jabril Peppers is playing extremely well. But the best signing that GM Dave Gettleman had was cornerback James Bradbury. He's been a top 5 corner all year long. He's been shutting down receivers, and he's really been the key to this defense. And Coach Judge has been an excellent hire so far. He's really motivating his guys to play for him. And it's just been a really fun thing to watch. Being a Giant fan has been a lot of fun to watch this team compete week in and week out. So I'm going to turn it over to Evan. Evan, what is one thing as a Giant fan that you look forward to watching each week?
Well, like you mentioned before, they've had a lot of close games, and like to point out a few, that Eagles game and the Buccaneers game honestly could have gone either way. In the Buccaneers game, they almost pulled through. Same thing with the Eagles game. Daniel Jones has kind of turned it around, and he's been really big for the Giants. You know, making a couple big plays in all of those games. And like you said, a couple different breaks, and it's a completely different team. Right now they're leading the NFC East, and it's looking like the rest of the season, if they play how they've been playing, again, a couple different things, and we could be seeing a totally different Giants team. And again, as you previously mentioned, the Saquon Barkley injury at the beginning of the season, that was a heartbreaker for fans and for the team. I mean, he's a star player, so missing a guy like him is a big hit to the team.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. And injuries has played a very key role in the Giants. As you mentioned, Saquon Barkley before. And then last week in the victory over the Cincinnati Bengals, the win did come at a cost for the Giants. Quarterback Daniel Jones was out with left the game with a hamstring injury. And we don't know if he's going to play this week or what Jones' status is. So, Chris, if Jones is out for an extended period of time, what is the impact going to be on this Giants team?
Well, so they're gonna have to run the ball much more, but with Saquon out, it's gonna be extremely difficult because their starting running back right now is the best, and without Daniel Jones, learning from like Eli in his like rookie year, it's gonna be hard without Daniel Jones to like man the offense.
Yeah, Daniel Jones has had a big impact on this Giants team so far. As you mentioned, did learn from Eli Manning. But if Daniel Jones is unable to suit up, they will have Colt McCoy in as the backup, and you will see an emphasis on that running game. So look for Wayne Gallman and Alfred Morris to have big impacts out of the backfield. So moving on, let's go to the other team in New York, the New York Jets. And we just talked about a team that's leading their division. So now let's talk about the complete opposite. The New York Jets are the worst team in football. They're 0-11, and nothing has gone right for this team. Sam Darnold has been inconsistent and has been out with injuries. He has only 3 passing touchdowns this entire season to 8 interceptions. The running game is non-existent as they have a 37-year-old starting running back in Frank Gore. Outside of Jamison Crowder and receiver and Denzel Mims, there's really nothing there. We saw earlier they cut Le'Veon Bell, and on the defensive side, C.J. Mosley opted out. Avery Williamson is traded. So there's not a lot of talent there. And then when you pair not a lot of talent with a head coach like Adam Gase, it's not going to be good. So, Josh, I'm going to turn it over to you. Just break down Adam Gase as a head coach.
As a Jet fan, unfortunately, I painfully agree with everything you just said. Look, I could lie and say Adam Gase is trying his best, but the bottom line is that he's just terrible. He's not a good fit for the Jets. He's not a good fit for any team. The man is a walking L. He couldn't secure a win if he was playing a game of knock hockey against himself. His coaching is too choppy. He sees the plays that work for the team and decides to try other stuff instead. But for what? Go with what's working. You always have to go with what's working. That's the way you get wins. Whatever happened to the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? That's just the common thing that everyone knows, and he just doesn't understand that. Fat L's. I legitimately don't see a scenario in which he isn't fired at some point by the end of the season.
Yeah, I think all Jets fans are hoping for Adam Gase to be fired. So now looking at the Jets' remaining schedule, Week 13, they play the Las Vegas Raiders at home. Then they go on the road to Seattle, Los Angeles, come home and play the Cleveland Browns, and then finish up their season in Foxborough to take on the New England Patriots. So, Evan, is there a scenario where you see the Jets coming out with a victory and not going 0-16?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty tough upcoming schedule for them. Those Patriots at the end, though, they did put up a pretty close battle with them in their last meeting. In the case of a scenario of them picking up a win, I don't think so, honestly. But that might not be the worst thing for the team, as strategically it will give them a better draft pick, if not the number 1 draft pick. But those teams are tough, man. Yeah, I don't know. I think they might go 0-16.
So you mentioned that draft pick, and this draft has been hyped up by a lot of people because of one man, and that's the quarterback over in Clemson, Trevor Lawrence. Now, Trevor Lawrence, since his freshman year at Clemson, has been one of the best college football quarterbacks, been one of the most hyped up quarterback prospects since Andrew Luck coming out of Stanford. And for the Jets, Sam Darnold, you drafted Sam Darnold to be your quarterback of the future. And in 3 years, he's proven that he's not really been that. This year he's struggled, just 3 passing touchdowns to 8 interceptions. And now you can't really fault Sam Darnold. As we've mentioned before, Josh mentioned Adam Gase is a horrible head coach. And we've seen Adam Gase ruin quarterbacks before. We saw it in Miami where he ruined Ryan Tannehill. And then when you see Ryan Tannehill go to Tennessee, he's been balling. And now I don't know if Adam Gase is ruining Sam Darnold or Sam Darnold doesn't have the talent. But as a Jet fan, would you really sit here and take Trevor Lawrence and watch the same thing happen to a guy like Trevor Lawrence? I don't want to see Trevor Lawrence ruin his career like Sam Darnold has. So, Chris, going over to you, what do you think the Jets should do in the offseason?
Well, I think that they're probably gonna take Trevor Lawrence. Then that leaves them with 2 quarterbacks. So I think they should try and trade Sam Darnold somewhere else. I honestly think a good place for Sam Darnold would be to go to Pittsburgh because Roethlisberger is going to be retiring soon. I think if Sam Darnold learns, I think he can learn a lot of things from Ben Roethlisberger. Then he can improve himself as a quarterback and just be a better overall player.
I do want to add something on there on the topic of QBs for the Jets. Contrary to some Jets fans, Joe Flacco did play. I just want to highlight this one particular game against the Patriots when they had a good game against the Patriots, almost pulling out with the win. But I kind of liked what I saw from Flacco. He's older and obviously out of his prime, but that's another, obviously backup quarterback option.
I just like to add something onto that. I agree. He did have a good game, but he's a little outdated. Like he doesn't have the ability, and almost win. What is that? That's an L. And I want to see wins. I don't want to see L's. I don't think that Joe Flacco still has it, but I'd love to see him try. And if he can even mentor Trevor Lawrence in the future, then I think that'd be good.
Yeah, it's good that you did bring up Joe Flacco. Just the one problem with him is that he is 35. But in the 4 games that he has started, he's thrown 6 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. So he has played well at times, almost leading the Jets to victories. However, they just couldn't pull it out due to many different factors, whether it's an ex-Jet Nick Folk hitting the game-winning field goal, the defense not stepping up. So overall, as the Jets, they look like they're a mess this year, but the future could be bright in New York, whether it's with Sam Darnold at quarterback. But the ultimate goal for the Jets is they need Adam Gase out. And they do have a young core, Sam Darnold, whether he's there, or Trevor Lawrence. They drafted Mekhi Becton last year. In the Jamal Adams trade, they did get another first-round pick, so they do have the assets from that. Wide receiver Denzel Mims has been good. Defensive end Quinnen Williams has been good. So there are some pieces that you can build around there. However, this year it's been a very, very brutal season for the New York Jets. Yeah, so a very good discussion about the New York Giants and New York Jets. So switching from the gridiron to the diamond, the MLB season just ended, and we saw the Yankees get bounced out by the Tampa Bay Rays in the first round, a very disappointing end to their season. With the New York Mets, they failed to make the playoffs. So both teams coming off disappointing seasons, and MLB free agency just recently started, and arguably the biggest free agent in New York City and all of baseball is DJ LeMahieu. And DJ LeMahieu's the 32-year-old starting second baseman for the New York Yankees. He finished 3rd in MVP voting. Some could say he should have finished 2nd or won the MVP. That's another discussion for another day. But the Yankees need to bring back DJ LeMahieu. So I'll open it up. Where do you guys see DJ LeMahieu best fitting in?
I see him back at the Yankees, for being honest. He was huge for the Yankees, and that would be a big loss if they couldn't get him back. He could end up anywhere, and whatever team he goes to, he's going to be a big part of that team's playoff run next season. I don't see him on the Mets, however. Again, he would be great, but I don't see that happening. But his both his offensive and defensive, on the offensive and defensive parts of his game, he is MVP caliber. So I think the Yankees really need that back if they want to win a pennant anytime soon and make the playoffs, make another playoff push.
I agree with Evan. I think that DJ's best fit would be for the Yankees, and like if the Yankees lose him, that would be a really really big loss. Especially, I mean, he just won the Silver Slugger and the AL, you know, and his bat was so important to the Yankees team, just all their victories and his defense. He can play almost anywhere in the infield. It would just be a really really big loss.
I mean, I have to agree as well. DJ LeMahieu. I mean, the thing is, no team is going to say no to him. Obviously, everyone wants him. He's a huge asset to any team he goes on to. He's got a huge bat, huge power, great average. There's nothing bad you can say about him. He's, like Evan said, MVP caliber. I think he's going back to the Yankees. If the Yankees want a shot at winning, DJ is a huge part of the team, and he's irreplaceable. You got to bring him back. I hate to say it as a Met fan, but he's got to go to the Yankees. Also, another free agent I like to talk about, Trevor Bauer, my man, Bauer outage. Now, this man winning the Cy Young last year for the Reds. I would love to see him on the Mets. I think he's a perfect fit. We need pitching. I mean, we have DeGrom, obviously, but imagine a 1-2 starter, DeGrom, Bauer, 2 Cy Youngs consecutive years. That would be ideal. He's expressed interest in the Mets. And I don't know. I just think I can see Trevor Bauer on the Mets within the next season, 100%.
As a big Mets fan, also, I totally agree. Bauer would be a great fit. We have DeGrom, who's one of, if not the best pitcher in baseball right now. We're going to get Syndergaard back. We're getting Stroman back for another year. They just re-signed Matz. Not sure how much that's going to affect the Mets, as he hasn't been the best pitcher lately, but we get him back. So Bauer would fit in well. He's a very big force to be reckoned with on the mound. He's a power pitcher, as I like to call it. And he has expressed interest in the Mets. He likes what Steve Cohen's doing now as the new owner, as does everybody else. But he seems like he would be another big part. And going back to 2015 when the Mets made the World Series, their pitching was a big part of that. Obviously, they had the offense part, but their pitching was one of the best bullpens and starting rotations in the major leagues. So Bauer would be another addition that would bring that kind of pitching back.
I personally think Trevor Bauer would best fit in with the Padres. I mean, they already have Mike Clevenger, they have Chris Paddock. If you add Trevor Bauer to that, that's just going to be 3 aces. Like, that's just lights out pitching. And they also have Fernando Tatis, who did really, really well this year. It's his like first year in the league. He's just been doing amazing. He's definitely going to be a future, probably MVP candidate. And I just think he'd be really good for the Padres. Because they can, if they get one extra pitcher, they're going to the playoffs, 100%.
Yeah, you could definitely see a guy like Trevor Bauer fitting in San Diego. And San Diego's a team that isn't afraid to spend that big money to get a free agent. We saw them do it with Eric Hosmer and more recently Manny Machado. But the team that I'm going to say is, I'm not going to say the Yankees, although the Yankees would be perfect for Trevor Bauer. They need pitching. Masahiro Tanaka's a free agent. James Paxton's a free agent. J.A. Happ's a free agent. So the Yankees do need starting pitching. However, I don't see the Yankees signing Trevor Bauer just because, one, last year they paid a record contract to get Ace Garrett Cole. I don't think that Brian Cashman's going to want to spend the same amount of dollars to get a guy like Trevor Bauer after the season that Bauer had. Bauer was 5-4 with a 1.73 ERA. And I just think the Yankees are a very professional organization. They like to keep everything clean and professional. And I just think Trevor Bauer doesn't fit that Yankees mold. He's very just outlandish, if that's like the right word for it. And I just don't see him fitting in New York. So the team that I'm going to say is the Los Angeles Angels. The Angels need to find a way to get Mike Trout in the playoffs. Mike Trout has never been to the playoffs, and that's a crime. Mike Trout is one of the best baseball players of all time. They signed Anthony Rendon last offseason. So you could definitely see Trevor Bauer fitting into the Los Angeles Angels. And I think if they sign him, it'd be a very big upgrade. So now, boys, let's head into each team. So let's break down the Mets offseason, and let's break down the Yankees offseason. Let's start off with the Mets, and I'm going to pass it off to Josh. What are some things that you, as a Met fan, would like to see the Mets do?
All right. So when I think of the Mets, I want to see some more outfielders, and we need a catcher, 100%. So with the loss of Cespedes, as we all know, it's pretty tragic, even though he wasn't really playing. We definitely need someone to fill in the spot, fill in a role of a big bat, a pretty decent glove. Obviously, Cespedes wasn't too great with the glove, but he made up for it with his arm. Big arm right there. I can see Marcell Ozuna, or we got George Springer coming to the Mets. I don't know. Those two look very appealing to me, and I think they would be a great fit. For catcher, ideally JT Realmuto, a great catcher, just all-star, just all-around great player. But yeah, I think definitely that could work.
I agree. I mean, we do really need a catcher. We can use some offensive power as well. Realmuto would be a great addition to the team. And as far as our offseason goes, I see it as a total success only because we got the Wilpons for the most part out of there, and Steve Cohen's now our owner, and he's already in the 1 month he's been owner has already showed that he's one of he's the owner for the fans. He's on Twitter, asked the fans what they want to see consistently. All the players seem to love him and are glad the Wilpons are gone. So he promised a World Series in the next 3 to 5 years. I don't know. I feel like that's a bit of a heavy promise. But I feel like, give or take 5 years, I would like to see us make another World Series. And with Steve Cohen, I feel like I speak for all Mets fans when I say this. I feel like that's a pretty good goal.
Yeah, for the New York Mets, getting Steve Cohen to be the owner, definitely, as you said, a guy for the fans. You mentioned that he's on Twitter constantly. And with the pandemic, every team lost money except for the New York Mets. And for me personally, being a Yankee fan, that scares me to death because the Yankees like having control of the Mets. They like the Mets being that little brother to the Yankees. And now when little brother gets a little bit of power, it's kind of scaring the Yankees. We don't really know what they're going to do in the offseason. As you guys mentioned, Realmuto, Springer, and Bauer can all be possibilities. Another name in trades, Francisco Lindor. So we don't really know what the Mets are going to do. And that's a scary thing for Yankee fans.
Well, I have something to say really quickly about we were just talking about Steve Cohen. I'm very happy because of that. I'm a Met fan, obviously. I just like to add in something. I recently learned about a little known guy called John Spano. I know we're going to talk about the Islanders at a later date, but if you guys don't know who John Spano is, he was a potential owner for the Islanders a while ago. And I mean, I have to say, Steve Cohen reminds me of little John Spano right there, except let's just hope that Stephen Cohen doesn't commit tax fraud and, ruin all the hopes and dreams of the Mets. But yeah, I just wanted to say that really quick.
Yeah, John Spano is a name that a lot of Islander fans are Met fans, and that name is cursed by a lot of people. A lot of people do not like John Spano. So hopefully, for the Mets' sake, that Steve Cohen is not like John Spano. So switching over to the other team in New York, the New York Yankees, the Evil Empire, the Bronx Bombers, whatever name you want to call them. They have a lot of questions this offseason. And none bigger than the guy who we already mentioned, DJ LeMahieu. The Yankees offseason stems around re-signing DJ LeMahieu. We mentioned before, MVP candidate. And when you look at the Yankees lineup, there isn't another guy like DJ LeMahieu. DJ LeMahieu is a pure hitter, and the rest of the Yankees lineup is all power hitters. Guys like Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Luke Voit, Gary Sanchez. They're all right-handed power hitters. So you need to bring back a guy like DJ LeMahieu who just diversifies the Yankees lineup. And then obviously there's questions about speed in the outfield, injuries, catching, pitching, the bullpen. There's questions everywhere. So I'm going to throw it to Chris. What do you think the Yankees should do this offseason?
I think one of the moves we should make is I think we should acquire Michael Brantley because one, as just an outfielder, right? Giancarlo Stanton, he plays the outfield. He's just going to get hurt again. That's a risk we don't want to take. Brantley, he's a lefty. That adds another lefty into our lineup because we have none of those. We have Hicks who's a switch hitter, and Gardner, but I don't know how much longer Gardner's going to stay around. And Brantley's he's a Gold Glove fielder. He's a really good bat. Just an overall really well player. And if we can get him, I think that'll be a really big play.
Just to add on, Alex, you said it before. Got one word for you: injuries. Obviously this comes from a Mets fan's opinion, but I'm a huge baseball fan in general. And I'm going to say something that I don't think many Yankees fans are going to say. I think the biggest thing the Yankees could do right now is look into and invest in some new trainers. I mean, these injuries are killing the Yankees. And, they could always use and acquire some new players that are going to add to the team. But the fact of the matter is they have a really, really good team. Obviously, they need to get some pitchers or some of those pitchers back that they could lose, but these injuries like Stanton being out full seasons, that can't happen. He is part of that playoff picture, and without him, it's barely there. So, I mean, and Judge and the rest of the team, but injuries are killing them.
I have to agree
Yeah,
with that.
you did mention injuries, and I just want to mention one thing. The Yankees fired their entire training staff at the beginning of last offseason. So they do have a new training staff. I guess it's just something in that Bronx water that all the Yankees are drinking, and they keep on getting injured.
I have to agree with that. The Yankees are a stacked team. There's no denying that. A full healthy team throughout the entire year. They're going to playoffs, World Series, whatever you want to call it. They're going far. They have to figure that out. I don't know what they have to do. Trainers, wrap them in bubble wrap, do something. I mean, they need something to stay healthy. That's just how they have to go about it.
They need to drink their milk.
Strong bones. That's what I'm saying.
Very good points. They do have to drink their milk, but there is more problems to the Yankees offense. Gary Sanchez and Chris, I'm going to ask you specifically because you watch more Yankees than a lot of other people. What is your personal opinion on Gary Sanchez?
I think he needs to clean up his act, and when I say that, I mean he needs to not suck. His hitting was atrocious. It just was so subpar. It didn't help us out at all. Kyle Higashioka was just a by far better player than Gary Sanchez last year. And it's just if Gary Sanchez isn't going to do his one job, and that being hit home runs, and what is the point of him? He can't field. Kyle Higashioka is a way better fielder. He calls better games, and there's no point in having Gary Sanchez. He's not going to be able to hit the ball.
And defensively, I mean, coming again from a baseball fan, I really haven't seen too many worse defensive like catchers play. I mean, he's not great at keeping that ball in front of him, and if he's not going to be the offensive power that they need him to be, he's got to at least be a great catcher behind the plate.
Yeah, a whole lot of questions surrounding Gary Sanchez, and as I mentioned before, questions with pitching. It's going to be a very telling offseason for the New York Yankees. And now I want to do another segment with just MLB free agents. We can open it up to any team. Let's go a little rapid fire, guys. Let's go predictions for the top free agents. And then there's one other player who I'll add into that, Francisco Lindor. We'll talk about him a little bit later. So starting off, center fielder, formerly of the Houston Astros, George Springer. Where do you guys see him fitting in?
Mets.
I agree. I could see him going to the Mets.
I agree.
Yeah, it's hard to say that he won't be a Met. You could also see the Washington Nationals being on him. Another player in the NL East, JT Realmuto.
Listen, it's hard, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, but the Mets.
I would also have to agree. I don't really see where else he would fit in.
I also agree. I mean, the Mets desperately need a catcher. There's no denying that. He'd be a great fit. I mean, if he wants to come to New York, come to the Mets. If not, he has other options. But I think he'd be perfect here.
I mean, I think if the Mets can acquire Real Muto and George Springer, then they're definitely at least a wild card team. they're gonna make it far if they can acquire Real Muto and George Springer, or even just one of them.
Yeah, that lineup would be crazy. McNeil, Real Muto, Alonso, Springer. Whole lot of talent there in New York. Now, we mentioned before Trevor Bauer. Just quick rapid fire again.
Last one, I would say going to the Mets.
Padres.
I honestly, I forgot who said it before, but I'd like to see him on the Mets, and I think he'd be a good fit as well. But whoever said Angels, I also agree with that. I think it's a shame that Mike Trout hasn't been to the playoffs yet, or hasn't gone far in the playoffs at least. He's a Hall of Famer, and going to the World Series, winning the World Series, getting far in the playoffs, that's just the last thing he needs to be like set in stone in the Hall of Fame.
I agree. I just don't know if Trevor Bauer is the answer to that.
I think you would help, but it would still take a lot more than just him. They would need like more pitchers, just well-rounded players.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, I mean, they just got Anthony Rendon a couple of years ago, like last year. But if they get Trout, Rendon, Bauer, and if they get another player, just to be a fielder, and like another big bat on their team, I think they can definitely go far.
I think Shohei, if he stays healthy as well, that needs to happen because he's a big asset for their team, pitching wise and power wise.
Yeah, a whole lot of teams in that bidding race for the ace, Trevor Bauer. Now, a Yankee fan favorite, Masahiro Tanaka. Does he stay or does he go?
I think he's gonna stay. I can't really see him leaving the Yankees. I mean, he's just been a Yankee for like his whole MLB career. It would just be weird to see him just play for another team. And I mean, like we're so close to World Series. I think if he stays along, if and just next few years, I think he can help us win.
Yeah, agreed. He's a Yankee. He needs to stay.
Yeah, I definitely think Tanaka will end up staying. And the last name that I'm going to mention three more names. Sorry. A former Yankee who left, Didi Gregorius. Do we see a possible reunion in the Bronx?
Okay, well, here's my take on this. It's another free agent, or not free agent, but someone we're going to trade. I think if we can't acquire Francisco Lindor from the Twins, then I think then we should pursue Didi Gregorius, because Gleyber Torres just proved that he's not the best fielder. He can't play shortstop, and it's just we need another fielder. Didi was just amazing in the field. He had a great bat. It was just an overall really well player.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Francisco Lindor, and because both teams in New York, both the Yankees and Mets, are in on him. So now let's do this. But now, trade scenarios. Evan, where does Francisco Lindor end up?
Contrary to my last picks, I don't think he's going to the Mets. Where he can end up, I'm not sure. Whatever team he does end up on, he's going to he's gotta fit in well. It's tough for me to give my opinion on where I think he's gonna end up, but I think the key is gonna be where he really fits in, not just because he's good, he's gonna help any team, but where he really fits in.
See, I also agree. I don't think he's gonna end up on the Mets. Yankees have a chance. Do you think is going to be a better or more realistic option for the Yankees, or a nice reunion there? But as Evan said, I'm not sure where he may end up. He's a great shortstop, great defensive, great offensive. Any team would be lucky to have him. But yeah, I don't know where he's going to go.
Yeah, as a Yankee fan, I hope Francisco Lindor ends up in the Bronx, arguably the best shortstop in all of baseball. He's someone that the Yankees desperately, desperately need. As Chris mentioned before, Gleyber Torres is not a good defensive shortstop at all. I think he's better suited for second base. And that also brings up the question, DJ LeMahieu. But DJ LeMahieu is such a big part of the Yankees. He can play first base. Move DJ LeMahieu to first base. And then you use Luke Voigt, who's coming off his career year, led the American League and led the MLB in home runs. Package him to Cleveland, send off a couple of other prospects, maybe a guy like Aaron Hicks, as we've seen Clint Frazier's defense develop. Maybe stick Frazier in center or sign a guy like Brantley. There's so many different options that the Yankees could do here, and I think they have to be all over on Lindor. What else? What do you think, Chris?
Well, like you said, Lindor is arguably the greatest shortstop in the league right now. I mean, he's also good friends with Gio Urshela, so I think it would be pretty cool to see Gio at third, Lindor at shortstop. I think that would be really, really cool and fun to see.
I mean, it's got to be him or Didi though.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think the Yankees. There's three options for the Yankees at shortstop: keeping Gleyber Torres, Didi Gregorius, or Francisco Lindor.
So, Evan, this is kind of an open discussion for you and I. Alex and Chris, feel free to, chime in if you want. But as Mets fans, we know that there's always wishful thinking. We always talk about getting these players, the good players. We want Bauer, we want possibly Lindor, we want JT Realmuto this year. How likely do you think we're going to actually succeed in that? Like, I think we may add with George Springer. I don't know about Bauer. Obviously, I'd love to see him, but how much do you think we're actually going to accomplish this offseason?
So I'll take this question first. As a Yankee fan, I hope not likely at all, because I really don't want to see the Mets good, because in the Mets in the World Series, like I said before, that's scaring Big Brother. Ultimately, though, I think the Mets have a very good shot at landing big free agents. As we saw, the Mets have recently signed relief pitcher Trevor May, and Trevor May held his press conference today, the day that we're recording this. And one thing that he said in his press conference that stood out to me is that he spoke to Steve Cohen and that he got the impression Steve Cohen is extremely serious about winning. And if Trevor May is getting that impression, what impression is Steve Cohen going to make on the bigger free agents? The guys like Real Muto, like a Springer, like a Bauer. If the Mets add two of those three players, or all three of those guys, it'll be a huge offseason for the Mets.
Don't at me. Subway Series, World Series, 2024-25. You heard it here first.
That's
See
all
it.
I want for Christmas, buddy.
All I want for Christmas is you, Evan.
Sauce.
Now concluding on that note, it was great having a discussion about the Giants and Jets and then transitioning over to the Yankees and Mets. A lot of questions for both the Yankees and the Mets. Stay tuned here on Empire State of Sports. We'll break down every single move as it happens. We'll be back weekly. It's great talking to you, fellas. This is Alex signing out.